Election day is quickly approaching, and for many people across the country, it can't be over soon enough because it's been causing a great deal of stress and anxiety. A recent study by the American Psychological Association found more than 2/3 of adults in the U.S. say that the 2020 presidential election is a significant source of stress in their life. The condition can be referred to as election stress disorder. Apparently, it's a real thing, and it can affect people physically, mentally, and socially. Steven Stosny is a Maryland-based therapist and the founder of CompassionPower, and he joins me now. Thank you so much for being with us, Steven. I feel like people are talking about all the anxiety that they're feeling about the election, and it's interesting to have an actual title that goes with it. So how do you define election stress disorder, and what are some of the signs that someone is actually having troubles dealing with it appropriately?
Well, the signs are if you get tense before you turn on the news, your whole body tenses up. It's preparing you for a saber-toothed tiger. It's trouble sleeping, it's your general irritability, and trouble in relating to other people.
Well, there's also a lot of other things happening right now that are causing stress and anxiety. New cases of COVID-19 are surging across the U.S. Millions of Americans are still out of work. How do these things compound what people are already feeling about the election?
They greatly intensify it because your brain mashes all threats together, and you just perceive the environment as being dangerous and threatening, and you get big doses of cortisol to prepare you to fight or flee. And that spills over into all areas of your life.
And that same study from the APA found that more Americans are stressed about the election compared to 4 years ago, regardless of political affiliation. But does it affect some voters more than others?
Well, some people are predisposed to anxiety, of course, and if you're a more marginal population, you're going to be affected more by the outcome of the election. But I think it's worse now because of the open animosity that's being expressed. See, negative emotions get priority processing in the brain because they're more necessary for immediate survival. They dominate recall, and it makes you look for threat everywhere. So the breadcrumbs on the counter suddenly seem like betrayal in your home.
The open animosity, that is an interesting point because I feel like I'm not alone in thinking that this election feels more divisive. It feels more personal and like it's fragmenting our society. So given all the other stressors, and as you explained that there are real physical manifestations of this stress, what are some of the strategies that you would offer up to people who are coping with election anxiety?
The most potent way to protect yourself from anxiety is connection. Connect to people you love. Hug your spouse 6 times a day. That gives you a hormone, oxytocin, that's a natural regulator of anxiety and that makes you feel calmer and more trusting. Reach out to friends, even if you have to do it by Zoom. See, part of the problem with this cycle is that COVID is making us socially isolated when we need to connect more. Exercise is also important for relieving stress. Write down your anxious thoughts, and next to each item that you write, indicate what you will do to make your life better and more meaningful, even if your candidate loses. And empower yourself.
That's a really interesting point, because even as people are looking forward to the end of this election season, there's going to be nearly half of voters that are going to feel disappointed. So what advice do you also give voters if their candidate loses?
Your life will be meaningful if you make it. See, part of the stress of the election is you're obsessing about something you have no control over. Whenever we think of things we don't have control over, we feel powerless. and powerlessness in itself will increase anxiety. So focus on what you do have control over, and that's your relationships, your work, your spiritual connection, whatever is important to you. The election is important, but it's not the only important thing, and it's not the most important thing. What's more important to you is being compassionate and caring to the people you love.
So, Stephen, our viewers just saw a graphic that said that this election anxiety disorder is affecting Democrats more than Republicans or independents. So it looks like the majority of all of those categories. 76% of Democrats compared to 67% of Republicans and 64% of independents. Do you think there's a reason why Democrats are feeling it more than Republicans?
Well, their constituency has more of the vulnerable populations that are going to be directly affected. And also, the party out of power is always going to be more stressed than the party in power.
All right, final advice for people who are coping with this. How do you offer support to others that might be dealing with more anxiety, stress, or depression than normal?
Well,
like, how do you help people that you love?
One important thing is to focus not so much on political policy, but on the values underlining it. Things like equality, justice, compassion, caring. Those are things that we all agree on. We disagree on policy. And reassure that you're going to be okay. You know, the wild card in anxiety is perceived ability to cope. Perceived ability to cope is always lower than actual ability to cope. We always cope better than we think we will. We're not descended from the early humans who overestimated their ability to cope. So just remind them of how resilient they've been at past crises, that we will get through this, and we'll probably get through it better than we were before the crisis.
I like that. We always cope better than we realize we can. Steven Stosny, thank you.
Thank you.